The Secrets of Star Wars is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give.
I am Emily Swallow, also known as the Armorer on The Mandalorian. And I'm just giving a little shout out to the Secrets of Star Wars podcast because this is the way.
You're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars episode 99.
Hello there.
It's a power that Jedi have that lets them control people and make things float.
Impressive. Every word in that sentence was wrong.
Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope.
This station is now the ultimate power in the universe.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
It's against my programming to impersonate a deity.
That's not how the Force works.
Force is with me, and I am with the Force, and I fear nothing.
Remember, the Force will be with you, always.
Hey everyone, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter, aka Father Fett, and you're listening to the Secrets of Star Wars, where we talk about everything connected to that galaxy far, far away, including the deeper themes and meanings. Just a quick plug for our next episode, not to say that this episode is at all going to be subpar. It's going to be an awesome episode, but next episode is our milestone 100th episode, and we are going to be going old school for that incredible milestone. So we are going to go back to where it all started, and we are going to do our deep dive on the movie that started it all, Star Wars. And if you're of our generation, then you know it's also called A New Hope. So it wasn't called that originally in 1977, but we are going to deep dive into A New Hope. In addition, we want to feature you, our wonderful listeners, as well by letting you email us questions that you want us to ask, both questions about ourselves as persons and podcasters on the show, but also relating to Star Wars and our thoughts. And you can send us all those questions at starwars@sqpn.com. And if you are tech savvy and want to send us an audio feedback too, we would love to get that, and we would play that on the show. You can record it just on your voice recorder on your smartphone, and you can email that to us as well at starwars@sqpn.com. And we will read those questions and play that audio feedback all during our 100th episode next time. And even if you don't have a question, please email us or send us a voice recording of why you love the podcast, and we will definitely still play that and feature you on the show. You don't need to have a question, but we want this to be a celebration for all of us as we continue to celebrate all things Star Wars and the Secrets of Star Wars podcast. So definitely mark your calendars for that. That's coming next week. But back to episode 99. Today we are discussing the 6th episode of Star Wars Visions. This is titled T0-B1. And joining me tonight on the panel is, first up, we have Ronan himself, Thomas Sanherho.
I love it. Yes.
That was a really great nickname for you.
It's so awesome.
And second up, we have Tobi, Mike Creevy. I'm not sure if that one will stick, but
yeah, we'll see. I might rethink that one. Hey, everybody, it's good to be back. Yeah,
and yeah, it is absolutely wonderful to have you back. So before we jump into Visions talk, there is just a little bit of news. You may have noticed this past week that there was a certain trailer that hit YouTube on the Book of Boba Fett. So. Of course, there was really no spoilers there, but Book of Boba Fett is coming December 29th. And did you guys watch the trailer, and what did you think?
I did. I could have done without a giant spider as the first thing you see. But I think, honest to God, like because it's like mechanical, for some reason that doesn't bother me as much. But actually, I think it was just because of what the trailer is. I was excited. Right. So I immediately caught on too. Like, I know there's a lot of chatter online about like how he looks better, so he's sort of healing from whatever. So that's kind of cool.
Yeah, well, and it's interesting because, I mean, whatever he was doing, like, it's way after, assumedly, it's way after he got out of the Sarlacc pit. So, you know, I don't know. I liked it. I thought it was really good. My wife was laughing about it because she's like, I don't know, he looks kind of old. And I'm like, he is kind of old, you know, even in canon, he's old.
Yeah. Yep. Well, you know, and maybe it's all that hot tub stuff in like New Zealand that he that was...
really he's going to a Bacta spa place in New Zealand.
Yes. It gives you your eyebrows back. That's good to know.
Yeah,
So.
yeah. I was happy to see that he looked more like Boba Fett. The other thing that I found interesting was just the fact that apparently he's trying to take Jabba's, captains and minions and rule by respect rather than fear. So I'm very intrigued at how that's going to play out, because
I don't think I really imagined such a plan that sort of, not that I didn't think he would think it out, but like the way you see it at the end, the unexpected sort of end of Mandalorian season 2, just, blast him, there I am. It's like, well, he's apparently really been thinking this thing through for a while.
he's got there business aspirations.
Yeah. Good for him.
Because being a bounty hunter is sort of a solo thing, and he's branching out into something much bigger. So yeah, that should be really good. So stay tuned for that. That, of course, we will be talking about the Book of Boba Fett in January. So that'll be an awesome post-Christmas gift to all of us fans. So jumping into Visions, first of all, before we get into this particular episode, I wanted to give Mike at least an opportunity to kind of give us his overall impressions of Visions in general, since he has not yet been able to share his perspective yet on these.
Oh, no, yeah, I appreciate it. I'll be quick, because Father and I were just talking sort of offline about this a little bit, and I was just telling him that, sort of by background, I never personally really got into any kind of anime format in any form per se, whether it's TV or movies or comics or anything, and no particular reason. It was just never something I kind of pursued or really educated myself, so to speak, on, in terms of the specific influences, or why certain if it's like a show or something, like why certain angles, why certain camera angles, why certain, action sequences, why a lot of, well, pretty much anything, why it's done the way it is. So I am completely, in a sense, uneducated and kind of a noob when it comes to any of those influences or backgrounds or anything like that. So in a way, I think I'm somewhat maybe hindered insofar as I don't have that to pull from myself. But I've been trying to just basically go into everything with sort of a blank slate and really just trying to take it all in and pay specific attention to everything. And I found it interesting. I think on the interesting side for me has been just being more, well, it's the freshness of it. So seeing a franchise I love so much, but through a completely different kind of lens, like all of us are, I guess, watching this. But so that's been interesting. I must confess, though, and this is something I said to Father a little bit just in general, that I think because of that, I don't have kind of like a ingrained kind of like excitement because it's anime necessarily. So it is just, again, there's like this yeah, I don't know. It's just, I'm taking each one kind of in turn. And I gotta say, I'm ashamed to admit this, because I know everybody loves The Village Bride. It was a bad night for me to attempt to watch it, because I was extra exhausted and I fell asleep like 3 minutes into it. Now I went back, I really did appreciate it when I went back and watched it like the next week. I gave it another shot and I was like, okay, that was good. But I laughed though, because I told Christine later, my wife, I was like, she's like, how long is it? And I was like, hon, it's like 18 minutes long.
I was gonna say, you had to have been tired. There's nothing about it that would have distracted.
I said that was fast. Yeah, no, but I did very much appreciate it the second go around. So, but yeah, that's it in a nutshell, I'd say.
Yeah, it's. This is taking everything that we knew about Star Wars and just kind of throwing it out, to the wind, and we just kind of get to kind of play with it. So zooming in then on this episode, in general, what did you guys think? What was your first thoughts of this?
It's very Astro Boy. Like I was never much into Astro Boy, but there's a lot of homage to it, just even in the name of the droid. So Tobi is the name of the son of the original scientist that created Astro Boy to replace his son. So it's kind of a, it's all, they were definitely channeling Astro Boy in this. I liked it but I also just, it's kind of out there. Like, it's very French, even for me who likes anime. It's very French on that side of things. Interestingly, though, with this one, it had the most canonical lore speak out of all of them, right? So
it seemed like it. Yeah.
The master scientist, he kept he kept using force mantras that come up in all of these other spaces. He talks about the will of the force. He talks about, he says, the force is with me, the force is in me. He does all of those mantras. And you haven't seen that really in the other ones very much. Like, there's been the force be with you, but not so much all of the other, like, really religious speak of the Jedi, which is odd for this one because it so much turns the religion aspect of the Jedi on its head.
Right. Yeah, and it was just, I thought it was interesting, and I we all, of course, I was saying to Father too earlier, I'm sure everybody got this sort of Pinocchio vibe too, to some extent, with this, this boy who wants to be, or this, this droid who wants to be a real boy kind of thing. And I, hopefully not overplaying the hand, but there's of course with that, some interesting potential Christian undertones maybe that I'm sure wasn't necessarily, one of the goals of the filmmakers per se, but anytime I see that, I really appreciate that idea of, I think C.S. Lewis talks about that too at one point, like that we're all, like in the toy shop or something like that. And there's a rumor going around that we're all going to become real, like that kind of, that transformative nature that we're not just called to ultimately through this redemption thing, just be better. It's this complete higher pitch of existence that we're called to. So that was kind of cool. I thought that he's got these aspirations that are so beyond the scope of anything we've ever seen for a droid before. The availability of him being able to do that is a whole other thing. I'm not so sure how I feel about it. Wait a minute. So
yeah, we'll come back. We'll come back to that.
Right.
I've got some things to say there too. So we've got Astro Boy, we've got Pinocchio. I'm going to throw in another character that it reminded me of. For all you Star Trek fans out there, it reminded me of Data from the Next Generation, because his pursuit to be human. And in particular, it reminded me of I think it's season 2 episode of Star Trek called The Measure of a Man. And so they actually like go into kind of a law process in determining whether Data can be reassembled or taken apart and basically copied, or whether that's a violation of him as a person. I kind of felt it was kind of all of those things. I've never seen Astro Boy, so like I definitely would not have picked up on that connection except for in researching for this episode. Pinocchio was also very much clearly like, oh yeah, this is a Star Wars Pinocchio. Other couple impressions on my end. I found it more childish than I was hoping for. But also at the same time, it was deeper than I was expecting. Like it starts off kind of childish, and I think maybe that's kind of the point, is it starts off that way, and by the end of the episode, it's not as childish. So, yeah,
it's funny you should. The only thing I want to shoot off of that just made me think. Like I feel like I think I totally see where you're coming from, and what I just kind of got a feeling of is like I think it had certain things in it. I have to go back and rewatch to make notes specifically, but I think it has some things that maybe like Resistance could have done, or maybe done a little bit better to to get that sort of maybe more kid feel without having it be like goofy, because it didn't feel really goofy to me, and it's its own sort of standalone thing. But I think I saw elements of it that could be a viable sort of Star Wars for a younger audience, like for the kids, without kind of dumbing it down, so to speak.
Yeah, and I guess I need to maybe sit with my feelings on this a little bit more, because the Tatooine Rhapsody episode was also you could claim that one's also childish to a certain degree, but I really enjoyed that one. And this one,
I had a moment like that too, because I looked up before I watched them. I'm looking up who does them to try and see, what other stuff they've done to kind of get a sense of who it is. And the writer for this one did this anime called Fruits Basket, which is a really good like slice of life. When I keep talking slice of life, what I'm talking about is like the anime style, like, they go to school, they do stuff at school, it's just life. It's just there. That's what they're doing. And so he wrote this, he wrote for this series that was very much a slice of life series where it was just, these kids that were going to school and all the stuff that they were dealing with. And so I was kind of expecting something like that. And that is not what this was at all. This was not I was expecting something more along the lines of Tatooine Rhapsody, maybe a little more, into the Star Wars universe. And then, man, this was just kind of very fairy tale writing style. Right. And so I was not ready for this when I watched it. And it was fun. It was interesting. And I think it's really good. Like watching it with my kids is great because my kids each connect with these in a different way. And my 8-year-old really latched onto this one. Like this was his thing. He loved this one. He thought it was great. It fit all of his kind of, it had that really rounded corners on everything. And so like you're saying, Father, it's childish, but in the right way where it pulls that child into that deeper meaning of what's going on. And so, there's the story there that's deeper about legacy and about, about purpose and calling. And it's really, so when we get into it a little more, we'll talk more about it. But I really liked that aspect of it, like seeing it through my child's eyes. It was really helpful.
Yeah, well, to kind of lead us into that, we're gonna do things a little bit different this evening. I'm gonna give an overview of the summary first, and then we'll kind of get into more detailed topics for discussion, because a lot of the topics here are sort of, you kind of have to take the story as a whole to kind of see and see. So we're gonna start off with just kind of a brief summary as best as I was able to do. So hang in there with me on this one. So T0-B1 is a droid who aspires to be a Jedi. His creator, Professor Mitaka, and he, along with a number of other droids, are on a planet attempting to terraform it and bring life to this barren surface. T0-B1 is bored with the work and wants to see the galaxy. He daydreams of being a Jedi and even feels something calling out to him. Professor Mitaka sends him on a quest to find a kyber crystal on the planet, something needed to create a lightsaber and be a Jedi. T0-B1 searches the entire planet and can't find it, so he decides to search in the basement where they live, where Professor Mitaka has forbidden him to go. In the basement, T0-B1 finds a ship and powers it up, inadvertently signaling to an Inquisitor to come to the planet to kill any Jedi that he might find. Professor Mitaka reveals himself to be one of these old Jedi and uses the Force and hides T0-B1, and Mitaka is killed by the Inquisitor. T0-B1 comes out of hiding and finds his master's burial site and promises to continue his work, and the droids all work together, eventually bringing life back to the planet. As it rains, T0-B1 finds the kyber crystal in his master's burial site, and the Inquisitor is drawn back to the planet, and they begin a fight. In a Force vision, T0-B1 is knighted a Jedi by Professor Mitaka, and newly renamed Tobi fights the Inquisitor. The Inquisitor is stunned that Tobi is a droid, and Tobi defeats the Inquisitor with the help of the other droids. Finally, Tobi and all the droids head off in the ship to help other planets, because that's what Jedi do. The end. So the first thing, at least, that I wanted to touch on, and we kind of already touched on it a little bit, was the Astro Boy Pinocchio connection. And so in kind of just reading about Astro Boy, so I will confess I've never seen it, I've never read it. It's just, this is kind of what I've been pulling from it. This was very clearly in honor of Astro Boy, and there's a lot of similarities and stuff, because Astro Boy is an android who is sort of, he was supposed to kind of take the place of Tobio, the
Tobio, yeah.
Tobio.
It's Toby in the English one, so
yeah. So like even the name there is reminiscent of the other. So Astro Boy is an android who's sort of, being forced to assimilate into human culture. So there's that aspect of, a droid becoming human, and even like Pinocchio, that whole process of going from, being a mischievous wooden doll to learning to become good and being a real boy. I think this is the story of T0-B1 kind of going through that same transformation process by the end of the episode. There was like even the art style with Astro Boy, they're similar there. And even the Professor Mitaka is sort of modeled after the and I feel so bad. I'm sorry if I butchered this name in Japanese, but he's sort of modeled after the white-haired Professor Hiroshi Ochanomizu. I hope I got that right. And even like in this anime,
I'm not a huge fan of Astro Boy, so I can't
yeah, you can't help me out, Thomas.
Sorry.
There was even a lot of apparently kind of they were fighting for robot rights in the anime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which is actually a Star Wars theme too.
Yeah, I thought it was to me this was really reminiscent of one of my favorite Pinocchio variety tales, which was AI. So if you haven't seen it, I definitely recommend it. It's a beautiful movie. It was cut short by the death of its director, and then kind of got a slapped on ending that was a homage to him, which made it not end as well as it should have. But it's a really great movie about an android that's trying to become human, and it happens to be a boy android that's trying to become human, and it's so I got a lot of that sense from it, but very much more in the really embracing the fairy tale aspect of the Pinocchio tale, and like this being extremely fairy tale-esque. And I liked it. I thought that aspect of it was really interesting, and it draws you in. It makes you think, okay, well, who are we to say what androids are capable of? And if they do develop this sense of wonder and kind of, because you get the sense throughout the Star Wars universe, and they're really good about this, that the droids are quippy, they have an attitude, but they rarely have that spark of wonder about the world. And I think the one variation that we get is the droid in the Solo movie, where she kind of is like dreaming about becoming a partner for Lando, but I'm not sure how much of that is just her attitude and how much is that sense of wonder and impossibility. But here you get a very clear sense that this droid is not your standard droid with just a weird personality quirk, but that he actually dreams of becoming something different and of changing and of growing and embracing the use of the Force and becoming a Jedi. And it's different. It's takes you a minute as a Star Wars fan to go, okay, all right, yeah, I'll ride this wave.
That's where this episode sort of takes what we know about Star Wars and says, like, ignore everything that you knew before, and you're gonna do something new. And that was one of the questions that I was pondering as I was preparing for this discussion was, well, I mean, it kind of begs the question, like, a couple questions. Are droids truly life forms, for one? You could get even deeper and say, well, do droids have souls, which is kind of a fun philosophical kind of problem to talk about. But then in context of this episode, then what does it take to actually be a Jedi? And like, what's necessary behind that? And, it from the way that we understand, or that we have understood the Force to work, is that, I mean, even Yoda says that life creates the Force. And so there's this immediate connection that the Force is connected to life, and life causes it to grow and work. And there's this assumption that only someone who is authentically living can access the Force and be a Jedi. And so where does a droid fit in? You know, where does a machine fit into this? If it's just a machine running algorithms and artificial intelligence, is that truly sentient life or not? Yeah, and L3 from Solo is definitely the clearest kind of example of a droid who has seemingly more than just an AI kind of program, but is seemingly dreaming or sentient in that sense. So those are all kind of, I guess, fun questions to ponder and
well, I was just thinking, I don't know how much of a connection this is, but it's it's been taking forever just because of how long it takes me to do stuff, but I've been working my way through the Silmarillion lately, and it's really interesting if any listeners have read that or heard audiobook or whatever it is, but there's that scene where the one Ainur character, like the kind of archangel type, character, Aule, creates the dwarves, and just because he thinks it's really cool. Like he basically, this master smith kind of angel, and he makes these dwarves because he's all into, like, it's in that section where they're all participating basically in this sort of what Tolkien himself called this sub-creation, right? Where it's neat, like this vision that Tolkien has, basically like God creates these super angels, right? And then the angels kind of have some capacity and responsibility and some degree of freedom to kind of create as well, in a sense, with what they're given from him to start with. But that the idea in that story is that Aule goes kind of a little too far. He wasn't supposed to create these creatures, and so he's repentant, and he picks up his hammer to kind of smash them when he gets confronted by God, essentially, and then God takes pity on them, and he's like, no, they're all right, we'll keep them, but they gotta sleep for a while because I've got this plan, they'll wake up later, and then they do, of course, and they're unruly and they're kind of interesting, and they have their own character that somehow fits into the more direct story. So I guess I'm wondering, I don't know how far they want to go with this, but do you have room in Star Wars for like something being more mysterious about the nature of the Force and of life itself, that even those who thought they knew the whole picture, and someone like Yoda, you just sort of don't even assume that there's something that Yoda doesn't know about the Force,
right?
He's Yoda, but it's like, well, I don't know, maybe Yoda didn't know that droids can possibly tap into the Force too,
Well,
so I don't know.
You get the sense here that the Master is kind of intrigued, right? Like they do a really good job of him interacting with T0-B1 and asking him questions about things, especially once he starts talking about the dreams of using the Force and becoming a Jedi, and he's like, really? Well, there's this kyber crystal, right. And it's kind of like,
I was surprised how fast he's like, you can go find, if you can find a kyber.
Yeah.
What I loved about that though too was that, like, there was this real fatherly dimension of Professor Mitaka, because it wasn't like T0-B1 is like, well, I'm having I feel like something's calling out to me, and he's like, and he didn't just shut him down, but he encourages him and it sends him on this quest to go find the kyber crystal, like go search the entire planet. It's almost
like the dad, we want a dog. You're like, you have to feed the dog and give the dog, like, make them practice or make them do things to demonstrate that they're ready to have a dog. We didn't do that because we already had a dog by the time our girls were real little. So we sort of, next time around, make them, so, but it's like, okay, you have to make an effort. This isn't easy,
But he's also protective too. So like, I mean, he tells T0-B1 to stay out of the basement. And not because it's like, it's he wants him to stay out of the basement because he'll get into trouble and call the Inquisitor, which is exactly what he does. But it's not like arbitrary that you just can't go down there. It's there. He's protective. And then, of course, when the Inquisitor comes, he puts him uses the Force and kind of conceals him, and is protective of him there too. So I appreciated that dynamic of you've got kind of a father-son dynamic going on there.
Well, and I hope this isn't dark humor, but I mean, like, normally when I'm telling my girls that I don't want them to do something, or especially the 5-year-old, I'm mostly thinking about her safety. I'm not thinking about me dying as a result of her. It's like, don't go in the basement. And then he actually gets, ends up having to sacrifice his own life as a result of the kid going in the basement. So, oh my goodness.
That's what I always think of when they're like around me and I'm building something and it's like, I'm going to die because this kid's going to walk into something. They're going to do something dumb. And then I'm going to saw my hand off.
You're so outnumbered. Yeah.
I'm just watching them. I'm like, I'm going to have to save their life. And in doing that,
in that moment.
Yeah. But it's interesting too that his death, that Mitaka's death is the catalyst to not just the awakening of T0-B1's powers, but the changing of his purpose too. And I thought that was really a really powerful statement hidden under all of this kind of silliness that's going on. It's like you see he takes up the mantle of the person that he was respectful of, but totally changes what his calling was into this thing that he embraces with such power, and in doing so ends up back at the place that he felt he was destined to be. And that's so many times in our life we end up finding that same trade-off, right, where we're like, this isn't what I expected I needed to be doing, but I'm going to do it because I feel responsible for it. And then you go down that path and suddenly you're at that place where you expected. What is the quote? We very often find our destiny in the measures we try and take to avoid it.
Yeah, I found this whole process to be, it's very a Star Wars topic, but the whole idea of vocation. Like a lot of us want to run from, where God is calling us in life. And often it's in the running away that, we exactly find ourselves going where we didn't expect to, or perhaps, we did expect years ago, but the route there was not expected. And definitely, T0-B1, he grows into that vocation. He kind of lets go of his dreams of seeing the galaxy to stay and terraform the planet. But then by the end of the episode, they're going to explore the galaxy and help other planets. So yeah, very, very cool there. I did see a parallel between Tobi's journey and the planet's journey. So as Tobi is helping to terraform the planet, it's almost like that's part of his own growth as well. Like the life is growing in him in the same way that it's growing on the planet. And it's when the planet is finally back fully alive that his powers sort of become the most prominent, and he takes up that mantle. And that's of course when the Inquisitor comes back and causes all sorts of issues. And so speaking of that, I did want to talk about the battle between T0-B1 and the Inquisitor, because I think that's kind of the climax of the whole story. And I found it to be another turning point. So I appreciated that, Thomas, you pointed out that one of the turning points is when Mitaka dies. But this battle, I think, is also absolutely crucial in his own turning point, because I noticed that he goes from being T0-B1 to Tobi in that Force vision where Professor Mitaka kind of knights him and says that you're my Padawan and takes him and makes him a full Jedi Knight, and then he's renamed Tobi instead of just T0-B1. And I really liked that whole process, because the whole taking on a new name signifies, something substantial has changed. There's a new life here, and that happens. In fact, it happens kind of all the time. And we see it in scripture, Abram becomes Abraham, and Peter, or Simon becomes Peter. Jesus renames him Peter, the rock in which Jesus will build his church. But even contemporary, taking on a new name is still something that happens today. When you have someone who enters religious life, they often will take on a new name for that. Or even like myself becoming a priest, I became Father Andrew, not just Andrew. And Father is not a title. It's my name. It's who I am. It's my vocation. But also even in marriage, it happens too. Like your wives took on a new name when they married you. And so it's
God bless her. It was a bold move.
So I loved that whole dynamic of the name change.
Well, and especially in this case too, with the fact that I think there's extra kind of coolness to it, if you will, that it's a switch from a number to a name.
Right.
You know, and that just carries with it such more of a, you know, even when we call, you know, like the difference you feel like, I sometimes call him R2D2. And R2 is just short for that, but not really. He's R2. He's ARTOO.
ARTOO,
You know what I mean? Right?
Even in the novels, they'll spell it out. ARTOO.
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, and another Star Wars example is really interesting because the Jedi don't take a name, but the Sith do, and that's you know, kind of an alteration of the goodness of it. They take titles, right? The Jedi have the title of Padawan and Master, but the Sith actually alter their name to this completely different thing.
And the Inquisitor himself was kind of a fun character to kind of look at, because I think, at least for me, the Inquisitor voiced my own initial resistance to this, because like after the name change and Tobi, you know, kind of comes back and the Inquisitor stabs him in the hand, and he realizes that he's a droid, and the Inquisitor is like completely shocked that he's a droid. And so I think that was almost like the audience's reaction to the same thing. Like, he's a droid and a Jedi. Okay. You know, and
he's a droid.
You know, but ultimately I think that causes his downfall, is like he assumed he knew Tobi and completely didn't, and Tobi is able to use the Force and use the other droids to take him down. That was kind of it for the big topics that I had. What other things did you guys kind of pick up from this episode?
So I went looking for other droids that have used the Force, and there are none. There are zero.
Yeah.
Absolutely zero droids that use the Force. The closest example you can get, and this is the reason I went looking, was because I was like, I remember there being something about this. And there was this group called the Iron Knights in Legends that was they fought the Yuuzhan Vong, so it was kind of the post original Star Wars movies. And what was going on there was that it was like shards of beings that could use the Force, and so they were alive, but they needed bodies. So they were like kind of disembodied Force users that needed bodies to be able to work, and so the shards were kept inside of these mechanical beings that were like droids, but they weren't droids. So that's the closest we get in Star Wars canon to a droid being a Force user.
Yeah, and we have, I mean, there's this whole, like the amount of time and effort and resources that Palpatine commits to cloning, you know, at the core of it is, I mean, I've assumed this whole time a baseline assumption that it's something that needs to be organically replicated or housed, you know. And so now, I mean, I don't know. I think, did you guys mention early on in this series, you know, on Vision specifically, that various people behind it had basically said, like, you kind of have to just let canon kind of go.
Yeah.
Was it something to the, I don't want to misquote it, but so I'm assuming that applies to this as well.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't expect to see, like, you know, guess what? The big twist in the Rogue Squadron movie is going to be that, like, the ships use the Force. You know, like, okay, well, no. So I that was my sort of guess with it. It's just like a Star Wars version of What If.
Yeah,
right.
Almost.
That's exactly
like
what
that.
These are. Yeah,
is that yeah? Which is cool.
I love that. I think that's a good aspect of it.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, it's sort of
the sandbox thing, right?
Yep.
You know, like you can't make C-3PO use the Force. Like, you can use the Force. You know, it's like the toy you got that day.
So there is some actual canon against this kind of thing too, and so there's a lot of debate about what Obi-Wan means when he says that Anakin is more machine than man now, and there's debate about whether or not Vader is as powerful as Anakin Skywalker was, and a lot of people believe that he's not. He is a shell of himself because there's so little that's left of him that's organic. So I love this episode because I think it's really, it plays its own place, and as long as we're looking at these outside of like canon, they're not going to change the way that we're looking at Star Wars as a whole. They're really good, but I think when you do dig into it and you want to like talk about whether or not a droid can be a Force user, the answer is pretty clearly no. Which then goes back to all those other questions you were saying when we talk about droids, right? Do they have a soul? Do they have, and it's interesting to think about that kind of stuff. I'm coming off of just watching Dune, and Dune is all about like they've gotten rid of all machines. Like there are no more computers. Computers are illegal. They don't use them anymore because they had AI at some point in the history of humanity, and it went haywire, and they were like, no more of that. We're done. And so there are no computers, and that's just the way that they operate. And, so between that and this kind of thing, and then we get into these talks on the secrets of tech, which is another one of our podcasts at SQPN, all the time about AI rights and whether or not an AI can have morals. And there are so many interesting conversations happening in humanity right now because we are so reliant on machines, one, and two, we're getting to a point where we're making machines that are as fast as and as and in a lot of cases more capable than we are, and we're starting to ask that question: what happens when they become dramatically more capable than we are at doing general tasks? And what does that mean for us? What does that mean for the machines? So seeing something like this kind of, it gets that Pinocchio aspect and pulls it into like, because I think the big problem with Pinocchio was as a toy, he couldn't have those internal qualms and that led him to be a better person, right? He could only follow what was right in front of him. And that was the big problem, is that to become a real boy, he had to gain a conscience, basically gain a system of morals. And so you see something very similar here, where this droid has these dreams, but he's not taking responsibility for the things that he's supposed to be doing. And to become a real boy, to become a Jedi, he has to accept that there are things that are important, that are significant, that must be done before we can gallivant off and explore the galaxy.
I'm just nervous on what I should do with my Alexa device now. But those are the questions. And, at least even from kind of a Catholic perspective, like even a self-aware AI machine would not have a soul, because a soul is the life principle of the body. And I mean, even if you could program a machine to think for itself, it's still not authentic life in the same way. But when we look at Star Wars, it's like, okay, we're completely out of our own universe and galaxy, and so we're playing with a whole new system.
Freedom is not just, we could do a whole other thing on this, and it's on my mind because I'm just ending a unit with my 9th grader Old Testament class right now on the Exodus, and trying to help them bridge this gap between, freedom is not just being out of the control of someone else. It's also not just being able to do whatever you want to do. It is being responsible for what you do. It's inseparable from duty and commitment and courage and all of those things. And so that would be interesting to pursue that, right? To like, you can have the most incredible AI ever. Who's it responsible to? Mm-hmm. It doesn't have to answer for itself. We do, that's got to... But
even like the morality of an AI would be something that you program into it.
Right.
I mean,
it would reflect its... it's exactly what Kuil said about the droid, right? With IG-11?
Yeah.
Or IG-11, right? About it's a reflection of its programmer, which we're not exactly, but now you wonder, is Tobi? I don't know, in a way, but
yeah. Well, and I think, I mean,
it's different though.
I think you have to look at this as we are looking at it separate from canon and say,
right.
I think they're intentionally making Tobi this more than just an AI program to act in a certain way. It's very clearly he has become more than just a droid. And I think that's clear in the fact that he can use the Force and he's a Jedi. Is that it's
right.
They're making that point, is that, and I think they're wanting almost to force us to ask these questions, right? And I think that's part of the point, and so it's really fun to engage in that, but it's kind of
it seems like it's not fair to Anakin though, because I'm just laughing like episode 2, like I want more and I know I shouldn't, and then look what happens to him. This kid's a robot and he gets to be a Jedi. Come on.
I always feel bad for General Grievous. I mean, he got the short end of the stick there too. So
absolutely.
Well, and I think even going forward, I mean, Star Wars is going to continue to play with this, and they've done this in the Legends books. Not so much in can a droid be a Jedi, but like what are the rights of droids, and so even in some of the Legends books, there's droids that are trying to stand up for themselves and all of that, and then you've got the droid in Solo that's trying to do the same thing, and and those are all good questions to ask, and and if we frame it in the droid framework, we can kind of play with it and do some interesting things with it, but it gets. I mean, ultimately, it points down to the just the core issue of we need to be treating life forms with respect and with compassion and love. And I'm not sure how AIs fit into that, but even just like say animals or beings with that aren't human. We're still called to treat all life with respect. Yeah. So I mean, go Tobi.
I don't think I'm sticking with that nickname, by the way. No offense to him. I just thought it was fresh. and it, by the way, it is what I used to order my lunch meat today. So
nice. Tobi?
Which was funny because I felt so dumb because I of course I saw the episode title. When I said it out loud the first time, I'm like, Obi-Wan. Oh, okay. Haha. Like, all right. But then now, then what Thomas is saying tonight, I had no idea about that. When they call him Tobi in the episode, I'm like, oh, okay. But then for some reason, it wasn't until I went to type it into the kiosk, which doesn't allow you to use any numbers or any hyphens. And I had to type T0-B and I, and I'm like, oh, okay. There were like 4 or 5 times where I was like, yeah, I got you. So,
well, I thought it was interesting. You bring up Obi-Wan, and I think the setting for this one is really a cool kind of throwback to Episode 1, right, or Episode 4, A New Hope, where you've got the T-16 Skyhopper, which is Luke's ship from that episode. You've got this wizened old guy who's, living in the desert, kind of a hermit's life. You've got the concept that they're on a desert planet, that they're making a way for life on this desert planet through just sheer technological willpower. And it was so cool because you got in the doctor or in the professor, you had this mix of like old man Luke and Obi-Wan, and it was a really good feel for him. I thought they did a great job with how he felt in this whole episode.
I thought there was one point when he was on the speeder bike, it even looked like there were 2 suns there, or at least 2. That they had, it kind of had a little Tatooine vibe to it. Yeah.
There were also some other callbacks too. I didn't really get a chance to delve into it too deep, but on the walls, like in the house, there were depictions of things, and I was just trying to look it up quick. I want to say that they were like elements of the Skywalker saga throughout the movies, but I'd have to look into that a little bit more deeply.
Yeah, it looked like battles like with X-Wings and
and
stuff.
Yeah. So there was a lot of fun callbacks there too. If for those of you who want more of a deep dive. The other callback that I found was Thomas, you mentioned the Rogue One connection, the mantra, I am one with the Force and the Force is with me. there was also another point where Professor Mitaka is talking to Tobi and says, because he's talking about his desire to be a Jedi, and Mitaka says, adventure, excitement. I'm afraid that being a Jedi is not as glamorous as it is in your dreams. And that is very similar to what Yoda tells Luke. Adventure, excitement, a Jedi craves not these things.
Jedi craves not these
things. So some fun.
And they put the little pause in there too, where you're like, you filled in the Yoda quote, and then he went somewhere else with it. And you're like, okay, I'll give it to you. It's fine.
Any other final thoughts on this episode before we wrap up?
The only thing I was laughing about was just a few minutes ago was the when we were saying about how it's not something that you're realistically going to see fleshed out in canon, and I was immediately thinking, and maybe that's what happened to Rian Johnson's trilogy. So, the infamous he's got a trilogy, and then Last Jedi comes out, and then ever since, every time someone asks, where's the Johnson trilogy? I'm sorry, what? Did they turn the air conditioning on? No, so no, I don't expect to see Tobi after this episode, but I enjoyed it.
Yeah. It was a fun one. So listeners, that's it from us tonight. And we, of course, want to know what you thought of T0-B1. So you can let us know through all the various social media outlets. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia. You can tweet at us. We're at SQPN. And you can email us all of your feedback to starwars@sqpn.com. And we would like to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Wars, including Stephen F., James B., DW, Helen G., and David H. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Wars and all the shows at StarQuest. And you can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. Also, just want to put in a plug for all the fantastic Secrets of Star Wars merch. You can get your own t-shirt or coffee mug, stickers, magnets, all sorts of things that encapsulates our philosophy of finding hope in a galaxy far, far away. And you can find all of the wonderful merch at sqpn.com/merch. Also, of course, please be sure to share the podcast on Twitter and Facebook, and let us give us a review on Apple Podcasts. That lets us know how we're doing, but it also allows us to be seen by more people. So the more reviews we get, the better we are at getting out in front of the audience who would want to listen to us talk about Star Wars. And of course, if you are not subscribed, what are you doing? Subscribe to the show. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, your favorite podcast player. You can find us on all of those. And you can find us on the SQPN YouTube channel. Just be sure to click that bell and get notifications of new episodes. And you can find all of our previous episodes by going to sqpn.com/Star Wars. And we will be back next week as we celebrate our huge 100th episode. So thank you to all our listeners who have helped us to get to this point. This is a huge milestone, and so we are very excited to share this with you all. And we will, of course, be talking about Star Wars A New Hope, the movie that started this whole thing and the reason why we even have a podcast to begin with. So definitely don't want to miss that. And reminder to please send us comments and questions and just why you love the show, and we will share that on our 100th episode next week. So until then, Thomas Sanjurjo, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Star Wars.
It's been great.
And Mike Creevy, thanks for joining us this evening as well.
Fun as always, good to be home.
Absolutely. You should have said, Chewie, we're home.
Yeah, Chewie, we're home. There it is.
Yeah. And once again, I'm Father Andrew Kinstetter. Thank you for listening to The Secrets of Star Wars on StarQuest.